Okay, my name is Mike Root. I'm the head football coach at Vienna Goreville High School. We are a new football program that's only been in existence for 5 years. We've played varsity football the last 3 years, and I've just completed my 42nd year as a head football coach in the state of Illinois. And what I'd like to do today is share with you exactly how we teach inside linebacker play in our Michigan 50 angle defense. We've used this defense for 42 years. It's been very, very good to us. And hopefully you'll pick something up today from this presentation if you're using the 50 defense. So let's get started and let's look at this defense, exactly how we teach inside linebacker play. Okay, the first thing we're going to look at is, and we don't want to go into a lot of philosophy, but we do want to look at exactly how do we teach inside linebacker play and what are we looking for as far as inside linebackers. And what you can see here is the first thing we look for is our inside linebackers have got to be physical players. Not only do they have to be physical, but they have to have mental toughness, because quite often in a ball game they are going to get blocked, they are going to get defeated, they are going to be the major emphasis that the offense is trying to block. And so they have to be physical and they have to be mentally tough. They have to be hitters. You cannot get by playing inside linebacker in a 50 defense, pretty much any defense in football, on any level, unless you must be a hitter. Size, this is really the tough one. And I think a lot of coaches really get wrapped up into the fact that they think that they're inside linebackers, particularly in a 50 defense, because you're not protected. You have big offensive guards in front of you, and they feel lots of times that size is a major factor. We have played linebackers that weigh 240 pounds on the inside, and we've played inside linebackers that weighed 160 pounds. And they've all gotten the job done because they had the qualities that they were a hitter and they were basically physical and had great mental toughness. Intelligence. I think this is something that can compensate for size. I think it can compensate a little bit for maybe not being a big-time hitter. A lot of kids can get by if they have what we refer to as football intelligence, which means they're able to read blocking schemes and get to the ball and avoid those big offensive linemen that are trying to block them. Agility is a must. I think in any position that you're playing on defense today, whether it's high school, college, or pro football, your 11 people out there on defense have got to be able to move. They've got to be able to run. So we work an extremely large amount of our time, particularly in the winter and the spring and the summer, on developing the agility for our players to move. I think everybody understands on a high school level, unless you're at a private school, we don't have the luxury to recruit, except in the hallways of our school. And we have to take really basically what comes to us. We always tell our defensive people, if we only have 11 kids, if for some reason we only had 11 kids out for football, and we had to take those 11 kids and put them in the positions, we're going to have to take the 2 kids who come the closest to meeting the characteristics that we look for in an inside linebacker. And that's the kids that we would have to play. Stance. Let's look at the stance of our inside linebackers. I think this is a step that a lot of coaches overlook. And I would encourage you, don't overlook this primary step in developing your linebackers. Our linebackers' feet are going to be parallel, or the inside foot is going to be slightly ahead of the outside foot, and our toes are going to be pointed straight ahead. That is a stance. We are going to work on stance. We're not trying to mold our linebackers to all look alike, but we do believe that a particular stance is going to be so important in the first step that you take that we're going to have to do that. Now, we want a slight bend, okay? Now, I think this is an area that is very, very overcoached. I see too many high school coaches today that want their linebackers down more than I think they probably should. We simply want a slight bend at the waist because they have to be over the offensive lineman into the backfield. And today, with the way the game of football has developed, we're seeing a lot of schools that we play that the inside line, that the offensive guards may be 6'3", 6'4", and if our linebackers bend too much to waist, they can't see over those offensive linemen due to their size. We want the hands in the holsters, and I think all coaches understand what that means. They can be hanging in front of them, but the key thing that we're always going to correct our kids on, they are never going to put their hands on their knees when they're playing inside linebacker. We truly believe that if that's what a kid is doing, the first thing he's got to do before he does anything else is take his hands off his knees. So we want our hands in our holsters. If not, they can be dangling down in front of you. Okay, our alignment. Now, our linebackers, their base alignment will be a 30 technique. And for those of you that maybe possibly do not use the Alabama numbering system, a 3 technique is the outside shoulder of the guard. Adding the 0 tells our linebackers that we're playing at the second level and we're playing on the outside shoulder of the offensive guard. Now, at the same time, during the course of a ball game, our inside linebackers could be in what we call a double 0, which means they would be stacked behind the nose guard. They could be in a 10, they could be in a 20, and they could be in a 50 technique. Again, the 0 simply is added to the technique used by the down lineman. We'll also place our linebackers in a stack alignment, and I will show you that later when we show you our stack defense. Now, another key. Our depth is normally at 4.5 yards from the line of scrimmage. There's a couple things you have to take into consideration here. It's got to be understood that that 4.5 yards is not carved in cement. You know, all linebackers are going to have different abilities. They're going to react differently, and therefore, based on down, distance, whether it's a run or a pass, offensive attack that we're facing, and whether we're stunning or we're not stunning, our linebackers can play anywhere from 5 to 3 yards off the line of scrimmage. And I think it's a mistake for linebacker coaches to simply lock their kids in and say that you're going to line up at 4.5 yards. The key, I think this is the most crucial phase of inside linebacker play. And I'm going to show you some multiple philosophies, okay? And I'm not going to make it a clinic talk. I'm going to show you the 2 different ways that we use to teach our inside linebackers to key. First and foremost, we're going to teach reading guards. And this takes a tremendous amount of discipline by your players, not to be what we call backfield onlookers. I think some linebackers can do it, some kids simply cannot do it. But we're going to make every effort as they come in as freshmen to try to teach those inside linebackers to read offensive guards. We truly believe that offensive guards, for the most part, will take us to the football. We're going to use backfield flow as a secondary key, and I'm going to tell you straight up, I think a lot of kids, even though you work with them every day, you go through individual drills, and you teach them to read those guards, when they get into the course of the ball game, they are going to be backfield flow players. That's just some kids, that's the only way that they can do it. Backfield flow will become the primary key when we are stunning, and that backfield flow will more often than not be the quarterback. So again, we have to have more than one way for our inside linebackers to key. All right, the initial step, I think, unless you have Division I outstanding players who are simply going to be Division I inside linebackers, I think every step, as soon as that ball is snapped, is crucial to whether that linebacker is going to make plays or he is not going to make plays. And so for us, one of the major keys is the first step. And we tell our kids, we start off from day one, the first step can never be lateral. We never want a lateral step. We're not gaining anything. We want to be downhill at a 45-degree angle toward the gap of responsibility with no false step. Now, I can't emphasize that enough, that you have got to be downhill, not lateral. Okay, and for us, the first step is going to be the foot nearest your gap of responsibility. Now, our inside linebackers are normally, more often than not, going to be B-gap players. They could be C-gap, they could be A-gap, they could be A-gap away. So whichever gap they are basically going to be responsible for prior to the snap of the ball is the foot that we want them to step with. And react to your key, which is the offensive guard. Now, gap of responsibility. Our inside linebackers are basically, when they are in a 30 technique in what we call 50 read defense, they are responsible for the B gap. And I have used the word before, foxhole. we tell our player, that is, the B gap is your foxhole. You protect your gap and we will be fine. Don't worry about doing somebody else's job. At the same time, like I said, they could be responsible for A gap strong or weak, C gap strong, or D gap strong. And I will show you later on, believe it or not, our linebackers will line up in a 30 technique and they will be responsible for the D gap to the strong side. Of course, common sense tells you that if they're going to have a D gap responsibility, they're going to have to line up at 5 yards depth. Okay, we want to look at some of the basic drills for our inside linebackers. And I'm going to go to the whiteboard now and I'm going to try to show you some of the drills that we do as far as developing our inside linebackers. And we are very drill oriented. We do not believe a lot in team. We believe in our practice sessions. We believe in going from individual to group to group. We don't want to just throw our kids in there and have 11 on 11 scrimmaging. We want to teach the techniques to each kid. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at some of the drills that we use as far as our inside linebackers are concerned. And this is a very crucial position on our defense, and this is one that we really have to have a strong assistant coach put in charge of coaching this position because of the importance of these two players. Now, the first drill that we're going to do, and we do this when they come in as freshmen, we're going to take two of our freshmen, probably pretty much as big a kids as we can possibly find. We're going to line one of them up here as an offensive lineman. May not be an offensive lineman, just a large kid. And we're going to take a running back, and we're probably going to try to get as big a running back as we can. Then we're going to take our prospective inside linebackers, kids that think they want to be inside linebackers, kids that the coaching staff may think would make good inside linebackers, and we're going to line them up, and we're going to line them up at 4.5, and we're going to put a bag right behind them, right where their heels are. We're going to lay down one of our bags on the ground. We're going to give a football to the running back. Coach will stand here, and when he gives the cadence, he gives the call for the play, this offensive lineman is going to come through here as a blocker with the running back coming to carry the football. Now, we're not concerned at this particular time, we're not concerned about this young man that we think could be an inside linebacker. We're not worried about whether or not he makes the tackle or he doesn't make the tackle. We're looking for a few things. One, first thing we look for, does he back up? Now he's got a bag right back there behind his heels. And if he steps backwards, he's going to fall backwards over this bag. Now, any one of these kids that we put in this position right here that step backwards over this bag, we're going to eliminate them pretty much right away as an inside linebacker, because without saying a word to these kids, what we are really looking for, without even discussing it with them, is which kids, when that coach yells go or gives the cadence, which one of these kids attacks up through these bags, and how far does he go, and what does he do when he meets this big offensive lineman who is coming to block him. Now, we have not taught this kid how to shed blocks. We've not taught him how to take on blocks. All we're looking for is what is his reaction in this drill the first time he does it. Now, I'm a firm believer that Bill Parcells says that if they don't bite when there's pups, they're not going to bite when they're older. And we think that is definitely true. Now, I'm not saying you can't take a kid and make him a linebacker, but this one little drill right here shows us right off the bat, these kids that want to be linebackers, are they aggressive or are they not aggressive? Because I think that's a built-in inherent trait, and that's what we're looking for in that drill right there. The next phase we're going to go to, now we're pretty much talking about our older kids who are linebackers, and we have developed them into linebackers, okay? This is a drill that we're going to do in pre-practice. Our linebacker coach is going to have the kids out there, and what they're going to do is they're going to take a linebacker, they're going to put him up 4.5 yards. Okay? This will be another linebacker, but he will be lining up as an offensive lineman. We will be lining up in our 30 technique, okay? And then what we're going to do is we are going to have this other linebacker who's assimilating being an offensive guard, we're going to have him take his first step. It could be for a reach, could be for a straight on block, could be for a down block, could be for a pull that way, it could be for a pull that way. All we're asking that kid to do is take the first step. Now, more often than not, they end up taking more than one step, particularly if they're pulling to either side. But all we're looking for this kid to do, and again, if we have to, we will put cones behind his heels. What we're looking for is this kid to take and attack downhill, reading his guard. He is reading his guard's first step, and that drill right there, we're not hitting anybody, we're not going any further than 1 or 2 steps, but all we're trying to do is we're just trying to get this kid to read what is that guard doing. Of course, at the same time, he also could step back for pass blocking, which would cause our kid to go to the hook zone. So it's a very simple drill, but it's one that we're going to do every day with our inside linebackers with their position coach, okay? We have another drill that we've been using the last 2 or 3 years that we got from Bill Williams, which is a tremendous drill for us, and we call it the cone drill. And I think what you need to understand is we're reading guards, but at the same time we're going to be reading backs. We have some kids that can do one better than the other. So what we're going to do is we're going to put, and what we do is we put trash can lids down on the ground, and we put a cone we put cones down. And then what we do is we put a running back here. We line our linebackers up in their 30 technique. And then what we do is we have the back run to a particular cone. And our linebackers will take their first step. So as an example, if this running back here, if the coach sitting back here told him to run to this gap right here, which is a C gap, our linebacker is going to take his first step downhill, and then he is scraping right to the C gap. So we're going to teach our linebackers both the cone drill, going to particular cones, just as well as reading offensive guards. Okay? Now, when we really want to make it a little bit more difficult, we will take these bags out and we will put the guards in there, and we will have the guards assimilating a block. As an example, let's just say they were running what would be a belly G play to us, which means the guard is going to pull, kick out the D in, and the running back is coming C gap. Not only will our linebacker now not only get his guard read, he's sitting in his 30 technique, he's going to get his guard read, he's going to step up, but now he's going to see this back coming C gap, and he will scrape right to the C gap. So we're going to teach both the cone drill, reading the back as a secondary key, as well as reading the guards. Okay? We think it's important to do both. And I think it's due to the fact that whether you're in a classroom teaching or you're teaching on the football field, you have some kids that are going to learn to do different classroom subjects one way. Other kids are going to learn it a different way. I think it carries over to football. I think that all you're doing is teaching a subject on the football field, and therefore, if this kid has to play for you and he's not good at reading guards, he gets caught standing, he gets blocked because he's trying to read that guard and he's not a good reactor, then you better teach him to read that back and know which one of those cones to go to. Now, I want to take a second also at this time, and I want to understand run fits. Again, when I say overlooked parts of football, I think this is another area that so many defensive coaches miss the boat on, okay? Because coaches want to get out today and they want to go team. They want to go 11 on 11 and they want to scrimmage. And we believe that we want to go the individual and the group and break things down. We just don't believe that our kids are going to play team defense if they haven't learned the basics. And run fits to us is so important. you hear the phrase, you got to know where your help is. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. Our kids in our defense have got to know, one, what is your foxhole that you're protecting? A gap, B gap, C gap, or D gap. And two, where is your help? So what we're going to do, as a prime example, we're going to put our linebacker here, probably put a cone there and a cone there, two running backs, put our other linebacker there. And what we're going to do, and this is the one we basically start out with tremendous amount of time, especially when they're freshmen. So what we're going to do in this case right here, we're going to have this guard step down in the center as if they're double teaming a nose guard. This tackle will block out just like he is base blocking our defensive tackle. And then we are going to get an isolation play with a fullback coming to block our linebacker and a running back. Our linebacker has got to understand the minute that offensive guard blocks down, we are going up to attack that lead blocker. But we must take it on with our inside arm and our inside leg. Our outside arm must remain free. Because when this ball carrier hits this hole, he has got to be forced back into here. When that happens, here comes our other linebacker. So we're going to do that drill in practice. We don't expect this kid to make any tackle at all. We do expect him to force this ball carrier back into his teammate, which is the backside linebacker. If you did this drill and you didn't explain it to the kids, and this linebacker steps up, and that lead blocker seals him in, and that ball carrier hits right there, he has not controlled his foxhole, and that's when the big plays are going to happen. So I think it's very, very important that kids understand you don't have to make the tackle, but you do have to play your position and take care of your responsibility. Okay? So that's a prime example of how we teach our run fits. There are some other basic drills that we do, okay? So when we're talking about basic drills, these are drills that we're talking about that we are going to do every day that it is a defensive practice, okay? Now, I think just like everybody else, there's been a major emphasis because of the college and the pros, which is filtered down to the high schools, and that is we are always going to do a strip drill where we are going to have one linebacker tackling the ball carrier and the other linebacker is going to come over. He is the help, and his job is going to be to try to strip, knock the ball loose, try to do whatever he can to get the ball out of the hands of the ball carrier. I think the second thing that we really emphasize is tackling drills. I'm a firm believer. I simply believe that tackling is something that has to be taught. I don't think it becomes natural for a lot of kids that want to play the game of football. And to take the biggest kids out there and let them simply run over the other kids, I think there's a fear factor. I think you have to get over the fear factor the best you possibly can. So